Good morning, everyone. May God bless you. Thank you for joining us once again on this broadcast. May God bless you. So much appreciate you for joining us and subscribing to our channel. May God bless you and bless your household. We thank you also for just taking your time to listen to these messages. It's an encouragement. When we see those views, they encourage us to do more of these things during these lockdowns. Please keep on praying that sooner than later they open up the city and we can gather once again and have church as normally we do. So thank you very much, everyone. And a number of announcements. Please take note of these. We have changed prayer. Remember that during the complete lockdown we were praying on Tuesday and on Thursday. But now we've just moved to Thursday. We've consolidated everything to do on Thursday. The reason being that people are up and about working, and the availability of people twice a week becomes a bit more difficult. So right now we'll just be praying on every Thursday between 6 and 7. The normal way, we just call in through the Zoom app, link with us, and pray together for 30 minutes, and the other 30 minutes you still pray as a family or by yourself, and we keep up that way. The rest of it is that, remember, your giving, it's critical. As you can see, we've been doing these things throughout the lockdown period. Please, we need you to be committed to giving. You can look at the bottom of the screen, those are account numbers from GT Bank and Access Bank. Please put your money through there and transfer it into those accounts. The offering will go a long way to helping us to keep up posting and doing these videos. I'd like to take this moment and thank Brother Destiny Lawrence for his diligent work. He's the one who's doing all this recording, editing, and putting everything together so that we can be able to hear the Word of God on a regular basis. I want to thank everyone once again for joining us to listen to these messages. May God bless you. Lastly, don't forget to continue under the restrictions. I know here in Lagos they've been relaxed, but as you go out, continue wearing the masks, social distancing, washing of your hands, and only go out when you need to. Stay at home as much as you can, and we will survive this thing. Amen. All right, let's turn our Bibles to the book of Acts chapter 9, verses 1 to 9. And I want to read from this text. It's the conversion of the Apostle Paul, Saul of Tarsus. Is going to be converted. This is his encounter with Jesus Christ, and I want to preach from that text this morning. It says, Then Saul, still breathing threats and murder against the disciples of the Lord, went to the high priest and asked letters from him to the synagogues of Damascus, so that if he found anywhere of the way, whether men or women, he might bring them bound to Jerusalem. As he journeyed, he came near Damascus, and suddenly a light shone around him from heaven. Then he fell to the ground and heard a voice saying to him, Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me? And he said, Who are you, Lord? Then the Lord said, I am Jesus, whom you are persecuting. It is hard for you to kick against the goads. So he, trembling and astonished, said, Lord, what do you want me to do? Then the Lord said to him, Arise and go into the city, and you will be told what you must do. And the men who journeyed with him stood speechless, hearing a voice but seeing no one. Then Saul arose from the ground, and when his eyes were opened, he saw no one. But they led him by the hand and brought him into Damascus. And he was 3 days without sight, and neither ate nor drunk. Let's pray. Father, thank you for today. Thank you for this morning. Thank you for your word. Thank you, God, for this time. I give you glory, I give you honor, I give you praise, and I give you worship. Thank you, God, for gathering us together, God, where we are. Bless everyone. Bless every listener. Everybody, God, is connected to this. Bless them, God, this morning. I give you glory and honor. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Abraham Lincoln is recorded to have said these words. He said, "My father taught me to work. He did not teach me to love it." For Saul of Tarsus, this is the opposite. He loved his work. He loved to do what he was doing. The commitment of the Apostle Paul, or Saul of Tarsus at this time, is very interesting. He was committed to annihilating all those who believed Jesus was the Messiah. Paul was a vehement man, and what he set his mind on to do, he put in everything. When he bit on something, he didn't relent. Saul's life, from a rigid perspective of Judaism, he was a Pharisee, as he would testify later on in life, and didn't have tolerance for anything else. The teachings of Jesus and his followers did not meet up to what his view and understanding was at this time. Many people are like that also. That only our worldview counts, or how you see the world is what counts to you. The Apostle Paul carries that kind of attitude. How he saw the world, how he saw God, was the only thing that he thought God should be. Only what we perceive many times in life is what things should be. There are people who are set so much in their ways, it has even become destructive and apocalyptic to everyone around them and even themselves. I received a phone call some time back from a man I had not seen in our church for over 7 years. I remember this man sitting across my desk. This is the last time I saw him in the office across my desk. And I was warning him on a path he wanted to take. I said, listen, do not do this. Leave this situation the way it is. Go your way. Do not do this. I remember vividly, he sat there, he looked at me, but he went about and did exactly what I was telling him not to do. I'm not saying I'm more prophet or anything like that, but I'm saying here that I could tell that what he wanted to do wasn't going to work out for him. What he was engaging himself into wasn't going to work for him. But he was adamant. And he wanted to prove to everyone that he was right. Well, he went on, and the phone call I received from him was him lamenting this whole escapade. Because he remembered that day he sat across from me in my office, and I told him, don't do it. And as he remembered that on the phone, he started narrating what happened from that day to where he is today. Today, he has imploded, exploded, and there is literally nothing much happened. He was crying over the phone. He says, Pastor, I should have heard from you. What you said that day, I should have taken it that day. And it comes because that day we sat down and I told him, don't do it. But it was adamant. This is true of every one of us. We have this adamancy where we think, or when we see something that we perceive we should do, we go in with both arms and legs. 2,000,000%. Saul was this kind of person, that if you had something that he focused on, he would give it 100%. He would go in with everything. Saul had set himself to destroy the church. And this was all that he did. He writes in Galatians 1:13-14, For you have heard of my former conduct in Judaism, how I persecuted the church of God beyond measure and tried to destroy it. And I advanced in Judaism beyond many of my contemporaries in my own nation, being more exceedingly zealous for the traditions of my father. Here he is, he's talking about his adamancy, his rigidity. When he believed something or saw something, that he went for it. And this is true of every individual. Most of the times when people see something that they feel it's right for them, or in their own world view or in their own perspective, they feel this is something I should do. And emotions are involved, and mentalities and traditions, they go in with everything. The voice of reason becomes small and less. The road to Damascus, or the Damascus Road, represents this agenda and the worldview. Everyone has a road to Damascus on many issues. A path we are on, and we are adamant about it. We are not willing to divert. You're not going to listen to anybody. What you're on is just what you think is right. I've seen people on the Damascus road of relationships. There are relationships that you know you shouldn't be involved in. They're toxic. But people are adamant to keep up with it. And they'll put in everything into it. It's like they're blind. It's like they don't see the consequences. It's like they're just going to go in. They don't listen to any voice of reason. They just go for it. I've seen people on the business or work road to Damascus. People who have been doing a certain business or activity, and you tell them it's not yielding anything significant, but they don't see. They keep doing it and doing it and doing it. They're adamant. They are committed to this thing like the Apostle Paul, exceedingly zealous. They are just dedicated to it. I've seen people on the Damascus road of thoughts. Certain patterns of thoughts that they have. Thoughts, mindsets of incredulosity, of fear, prejudice, they're judgmental, and they don't, no matter you bring reason, you tell them, they're just going to do what they see. The Apostle Paul is there. He is reading the scriptures. He was a learned man. He reads the scriptures. He had the Torah and what it says, because he's the one eventually who's going to be expounding on this. We can look at the Apostle Paul. He is the man that he was a learned man. He was a man who was going to eventually, write 2/3 of the New Testament. He read the Torah at this time.
But at this moment, he is a man who is rigid. He is on the Damascus road. And he's headed to the synagogues to go and persecute the people of the way, or the Christians, or the people who believe that Jesus Christ was the Messiah. You see, the problem with the Damascus road is that it feels like you're on the right path. Saul had gotten letters of approval from the priests. Every Damascus road has someone who approves it. For Saul, it was the religious hierarchy. They gave him letters. But for some of us, it's our tribal traditions, national ideologies, family agendas, career demands, peer approval, etc., etc. These are like that man, he had some form of, tribal that approved what he was doing. Saul had letters from the priest, so the road should be good. Ideologies, they approve. Family agendas, career demands, peer approval. There's always someone or something that gives you approval to get on the road to Damascus. To get on that adamant view, there's somebody who is going to say, it's okay, you can go this way. They're going to support you. They're going to write you a letter. Paul was carrying letters of approval to persecute the church. And this is true also in every one of us. Most places where you are adamant, there is approval from something. There is someone who's saying, go ahead. There's a kind of letter that you're carrying that when you look at that, it tells you it's good. I'm on the right path. Judas Iscariot got on the road to Damascus, or the adamant road, such that even when Jesus exposed him, it's amazing to me. Jesus exposes him at the Last Supper. One of you will betray me. He knew it was him, but he could not relent. His agenda became more supreme, and nothing could deviate him. Hell was giving him a letter of approval. It's okay to do what you do. You're going to make money. You're going to do this. And that's what I'm trying to address in everybody's life right now. Some of us are so stuck on our Damascus road. We are adamant about a certain agenda. You are adamant about the way you view life, such that you don't see that there's anything else out there. The Apostle Paul, all he sees is the people of the way, the Christians, the believers that Jesus is the Messiah, need to be killed or locked down in prison. He goes out with that adamant agenda. He didn't see them as human beings. He didn't see them that the side of what they were believing. He didn't want to hear that. He was adamant. That's the road to Damascus. It represents that. A road that people get on a daily basis. And they're adamant to say, you know what, this is what I'm going to do. Nobody can go over them. Judas, Jesus spoke to him. It is you. Yes, you who has dipped your hand in the bowl with me. Instead of him saying, I'm busted, he went ahead and did what he had to do. Because in his mind, it was something that in his worldview he had to do. On the road to Damascus, Jesus encounters Saul. And they have this short but precise conversation. Acts 9 verses 4 to 7. Then he fell to the ground and heard a voice saying to him, Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me? And he said, who are you, Lord? Then the Lord said, I am Jesus, whom you are persecuting. It is hard for you to kick against the goads. So he, trembling and astonished, said, Lord, what do you want me to do? And then the Lord said to him, arise and go into the city, and you will be told what you must do. And then the men who journeyed with him stood speechless, having heard the voice, but seeing no one. Here's the conversation. This encounter and conversation has been read into by so many scholars. And there are many interpretations and explanations to this encounter. But in all contexts, all scholars agree that Jesus was engaging a man and trying to get him off the path he was on. Let me tell everybody here, Jesus hasn't stopped getting people off the adamant road, the Damascus road. He still comes to people and says, so, he calls you by name. And he says, you need to get off that road. It can be a thought road. It can be a relational road. It can be a career, business road. But you're adamant about it. Jesus is saying, listen, you need to get off that road. You can look in that conversation, then the Lord said, arise and go into the city, and you'll be told what you must do. That's trying to divert him. He was adamant, you'll be told what to do. Remember, Paul was a person who had his own agenda. But right now, he'll be told what to do. Paul explaining this event 30 years down the road, when the mob in Jerusalem wanted to lynch him. Explains this encounter again, and you can read that in Acts 22. But in that context, it begins to explain that Jesus came to get him off the road. He explains it in Acts 22, almost word for word, but in that context he's saying, listen, I was on the wrong path. I encountered Jesus and he came to pick me off that road to Damascus. It was a road of adamancy, rigidity. I was stubborn in my ways. And Jesus came and encountered me. This is true for every one of us. You know, most of us, we are so adamant, rigid, stubborn about our ways. And Jesus hasn't stopped coming to meet people and saying, listen, go to a place where they'll show you what to do. There's another way to this. There's another view. There's another perspective. There's another way of seeing things. The whole encounter was to get Paul off this self-ascertained view. It's interesting in that Paul was headed for the synagogues to root out the people of the way. He ended up in a house where Ananias would come and meet him. Saul was diverted off the road to Damascus. This goes to teach us, once again, God still gets people off the road to Damascus. A lady saved her money for many months, and she wanted to buy new furniture in her house. She was determined and saved the money over a long period of time. And finally, she got the amount she wanted. She took a day off for work. It was on a Thursday. She was going to go buy this new furniture, change the whole look. You know how ladies love that. She's saved for quite some time. And she came to a service on a Wednesday, a midweek service, sat there. And as the pastor was preaching, she felt God speak to her and said, take that money you're going to use to buy furniture and give it to the church for this project that's coming up. This lady struggled with God at the altar. Said, God, but this is something I've saved for so long, and this and that. But eventually, she succumbed and wrote a check and gave it all away and went home. When she got home, she was upset. When she got home, most of us, when you do these things, it sounds, but this is the true picture of what happens. She was upset. I've saved for so long and I just gave it to the church. She sat down on that old furniture in the house. The question is this. How come when Paul was being moved from the road to Damascus, God made him blind? Why was he made blind? Why didn't God just carry him off that? The light shone on him and just, able, but he was carried off blind. Out of Jesus and Saul, left Saul blind. This lady with the furniture got home. She had done the right thing, but she was still blind. She asked, why did God tell me to give all that money? I've saved so long. It's been month after month. I wanted my house to look good. She was confused and she started crying. Blindness in this instance with Saul is a state of ignorance. It's a state of being unenlightened, oblivious, in darkness. Saul thought he was bright, sharp, and knew it all. Remember, he was a scholar of the Torah. And on the road to Damascus, he was led away from their blind. I believe that is symbolism to show him that the road to Damascus is a road for the blind. Most people, we are on that adamant, rigid, stubborn road. We think we know it all. We think we are sharp. We think we are bright. But in actuality, we are as blind as Saul. God was showing Saul the state he was in, blind. Like all the people on the Damascus road, they're blind, seeing only what they want to see. Paul is led away from this encounter with Jesus blind. Because Jesus is a healer. Jesus is a giver of life. He's the truth, the life, and the way. They expect him to come here and Paul comes out, but he comes up here now with an ailment. He's blind. Just like this lady with the furniture. She came out of church, she had done the right thing, but she was still blind. Saying, God, why? She's crying at home. Acts 9:17 to 18. God begins to speak. He says, and Ananias went his way and entered the house. And laying his hands on him, he said, Brother Saul, the Lord Jesus, who appeared to you on the road as you came, has sent me, that you may receive your sight and be filled with the Holy Spirit. Immediately there fell from his eyes something like scales, and he received his sight at once, and he rose and was baptized. That lady came back to church on a Sunday. Remember, she gave away that money on a Wednesday. She came back on Sunday and there was a revival. A revival starting in their church, and she sat in that revival hearing this guest preacher speak, and he was preaching on God opening doors that only God can open. She sat down there, still hurting from that money she had given. Monday she came and went. Tuesday she came for the revival and went. Wednesday she came And the revival ended and nothing happened. On Thursday, she went to work. And when she got to work, after some time, she was called into the director's office. And as she was there, she was told that she has been chosen to be the head of a division of that organization. The person who was there had just retired, and she was going to take over as one of the directors of this division. With that position came a huge pay rise. Came a house and a couple of vehicles. Right there, her eyes were opened. She then understood why God had asked her to give that money, the furniture money. She understood to say, you know what? God had other plans for her. If she had bought that little furniture, it would not have fitted into the new house. Besides, the company was giving her a furniture allowance and whatever was coming with that. Yes, the story ends up that now her blindness is lifted. She began to see herself as she's in the will of God. This is true of the Apostle Paul. Ananias comes and lays hands on him, and his sight comes back. Remember, he went blind on the Damascus road, and his eyes are now open in the will of God. You see, that road to Damascus, if you yield to the voice of Jesus, Saul, Saul, and Jesus, and Paul says, Lord, who are you? I am Jesus. When you yield to the voice of God in those moments when you are adamant, when you are stubborn, when you are rigid in your ways, there might be confusion, there might be darkness to say, why is God getting me off of this? But I'll tell you, there will come an encounter again where God will let his man come, lay hands on you, or preach to you, and your eyes will be opened. God is a great God and is looking out for us. We are stiff-necked people. All of us are adamant. When we see certain paths, we want to get on them, just like the Apostle Paul. But Paul responds and says, and here he is now getting his sight back. Now the will of God is revealed to him. He becomes a Christian. He becomes like the very people he was persecuting. Because now God gave him a proper view, a proper perspective, a proper understanding. You see, the will of God comes with that. God will not put you in his will until you understand what is involved. Somebody said you cannot know light until you have been in darkness. You cannot understand peace until you understand war. Similarly here, you cannot know the light of the will of God unless you understand the darkness of the Damascus road. Somewhere in that rigid state we are in, God begins to speak. And when you hear God, the will of God is revealed to you. Takes you out of that place. You are wondering, I wonder what Paul was saying in his mind. Why have I been made blind? 3 days he's sitting there contemplating, I cannot see. But God had a plan of showing him his will. I want to tell everybody as I close this morning, God has a plan for you. But you have to get off your stubborn ways. You have to get off that rigid road. All their traditions of how things are done Oh, this is the way this is done. This is the way our people do this. This is their prejudices. There are things that you have said, I'm going to do. This is what I want. And everything, like I said, there's approval for that. But listen to the voice of God, because God is speaking to you right now. Get off that road. Go to a place where I'll show you to be. And there He's going to put the skills of how you can be in the will of God. You cannot be in the will of God without understanding the Damascus Road. You cannot be able to function in the will of God if you do not understand the darkness, the blindness it was leading you to. You see, the disciples were in the Garden of Gethsemane confused, looking at themselves and saying, what's happening? Our Lord is being taken away. Blindness, darkness. All of that happened also in the dark hours of the day. And it's happening, and the disciples went and were hiding. The will of God looked like it's doing the blind. They did not know what was going on. Jesus is king. They're hiding. They are away. They are afraid. You can see Peter denies the Lord. There's all kinds of things going on at that moment. But we find them 3 days later. Jesus shows up to them. And the eyes begin to open. Those on the road to Damascus, they see him and say, so because God is about opening eyes. Listen, I'm not talking seeing, but I'm talking spiritual dimensions here, where you begin to see the will of God on your life. Where you stop being rigid, where you stop, God is going to call you. He's calling some of us out right now. And now you need to break away and say, Lord, take me. Yes, it might be confusing for a moment, but I'll tell you, there's somewhere where a man of God, a type of Ananias will come, preach the word, speak to your heart, and you begin to see life differently. You begin to see things in another way, and you are in the will of God. I want every head bowed, every eye closed, where you are. God bless you. Thank you for taking the time to listen. But you see, all that I've done, all I've been preaching here, is to get you to this point that you know only Jesus can get you off the road to Damascus. A road that leads to blindness. A road that leads to destruction. Right now, speaking to you, sir. I'm speaking to you, man. Are you saved that you born again? Myself, I was a sinner. Terrible man. Terrible mind. Terrible heart. Adamant in my ways. Stubborn in my ways. Stiff-necked. Until one day, I heard the voice. Bit well. Not in the literal, but I can tell you God called me through a preacher. Are you saved that you born again? And I came to Jesus. I said, Jesus, your Lord. It was confusing for a period of time. It was opened up to me. Through the church, the preaching, reading of the Word of God, a time of Ananias. And this is what I'm saying to you right now. You're not saved, you're not born again. Just where you are, God is speaking to you right now. I want where you are, just to, heads are bowed, eyes are closed, just where you are. I want you to pray this prayer, and you shall be saved. I want you to say, all sincerity, say, Lord Jesus, I'm a sinner. I've offended God. I've done things wrong. I ask you to forgive me of all my sins. I believe you died on the cross so that I can receive salvation. You are the Christ. You are the Messiah. Lord Jesus, I ask you to help me. Forgive me. Help me to live for you. Help me to make stands for you. Right now, come and fill me
with your spirit, so that, Lord, I can serve you. I give you glory and honor, praise and worship. Thank you for saving me. Amen. For the rest of us, where people, your life, it's difficult for you to be rigid. You are like the Apostle Paul, carrying letters of approval by your tradition, carrying letters of approval from some ideology, carrying letters of approval from some family agenda or how you think things should be on the road to Damascus. And God is saying, calling you by name right now. Every one of us calling you by name and saying, come, get off that road. This might be confusing for you, right, God, but God, this is what I want. This is what I want it to be. This is what, and you say, no, come off that road. And if you can do that right now, God is going to, He's got a powerful plan for you. He's got a place where He wants to change everything. He wants to turn you into something great, something profound, something that you cannot even comprehend right now. Jesus is able to do that. To Paul, he became the author of 2/3 of the New Testament. Revelation unbelievable. It was all on that moment. Paul could have kept on the Damascus road. But he didn't. He turned to Jesus. Same as you right now, turn to Jesus and say, God, I give up. How you see relationships, or a husband is supposed to be a wife is supposed to, those are rigid things sometimes. And you need to say, God, let me change. Show me. This is the way business is supposed to be done. This is the way come and just say, God, show me the way. And God is speaking to you. He can change your life. Let's keep praying right now. Keep praying in your own way. I want to thank everybody for joining us as we break this broadcast. May God bless you. Thank you.